Okay, we're back for the last of Roxy's Journal of Stitchery Volume 3. So I've done some extra work. I finally got the wildflowers up through the seat. You saw last week I was adding in these little forget-me-nots, little blue flowers. Just seeing if I know there was some other things on my little hedgehog. I added that last week. I don't think I added any more flowers except for this patch. So one of the, here it is, it was still in my handbag and I found it and I was like, oh, I am so happy. One of the little rolls of Liberty I got out at Balan. I thought that I had 3 and I couldn't remember and I got a bit confused where one was, but I found this in the bottom of my handbag. How good is it? So this little patch of flowers here I've just cut out and that's what I've added in here and then oversewn them all. So that was a fun evening watching, what was I watching? 911 Lone Star. And I mentioned that to a friend and she goes, oh, Rob Lowe. And I thought, he is actually looking very fit indeed. So anyway, I did a little bit more work on these. And this is my piece. I cut out, there was bits of blue behind here and I've snipped them back with the scissors. Done a little bit of embroidery over here. I don't actually know, it's like it's a table. I think the blue is the background from that bit of material. So when they say choose your own, I still feel like I would like to write down the garden path on here somewhere. And I've had a good look and I think there's room in here, but I don't really want to cover this beautiful bit of embroidery from that antique lace. There's a bit of room here, but once again we've got this because these are features. I love these features. I love the fact that this is old doilies that I've either had gifted or bought at the op shop. So my thought is that this is possibly one of the few spaces. Still deciding if I'm going to actually embroider it separate and then sew it on. It's a possibility. Right, so I've printed out the area. Double checking it's the same size, 100%. Yep, that's good. I've got my spool. I'm nearly ready to put that in. I think I've said before what I'll be doing is gluing it on here. I think this is the wrong spool. I'll find the other one. It's just a tad bigger. I'll be gluing it on like that and then folding it so as it's glued to that point. So that'll be glued on the spool, that'll be glued like that, and then it can roll up. I'm going to do that at the very end. Right, so I thought, I do think that I have skills that I don't always share. So anyway, I have this very old typeface book back from my printing days. Back in the days when you could get letraset. You've got texters that were letraset. You've got this film. I don't know if you can see it. It's like a masking film that we used to use when I was in printing. And also we could get these sheets of letters that you could make. Very hard to find any letraset nowadays. I've seen it on occasion on a, you know, like Facebook Marketplace or something, but because it's so rare, it's like people sell it for an absolute fortune. And I have no idea whether it's still got the stick or not. So I thought I'd have a look at these different fonts, and I really liked the idea of doing a font like this. An old favourite, brush script. But, you know, like ones like these lend themselves to a more, you know, space vibe. these, Gaudi Fancy. So they're very, very old. It's, for anyone who has had anything to do with typefaces in the back, you might be envious that I've got the book. Park Avenue's nice. Have a look at this side. And in the old days, you know, in the very old days, they would have metal letters made in that particular typeface, and then the man, usually it was a man, I didn't see any women doing this. It was sort of just before my time. These, you know, through maybe the 50s, possibly, where they'd put the metal things. Oh, and earlier, because sometimes you see in an old, like a historical movie, you might see it, and it might be back in the late 1800s, where they would get the metal things, and they would have a whole tray of the words that they wanted, and it would be backwards, because then when you printed it down, it came out the right way on paper, and that's how they used to print back in the old days. So I think this is the one that jumped out, Le Griff. So 61. Let's see how we go. Ringlet for a very 60s vibe. Oh, this beautiful old paper. Okay, so Le Griff. It's quite tiny on here. So I think what I'm going to do is pencil. Just get the HB. So it's the thinnest. Now, I know Rachel's doing Roxy's Journal of Stitchery, and it's probably pretty good to have a record of that. I'm thinking that might come right at the very end here. I might put that there, but I'm not at that point yet. I just do want to get down the garden path. So it's going to be like the D, down the garden path, down the garden path. I'm not sure. I might have to do a couple of trials. I mean, I don't mind the idea of doing it like this, wavering, but then that's a waste of that space up there. All right, so I think I'll try this one this way first. Now there's two different types of D's and E's and F's and that you can use. I find that this one, hopefully you're on screen, this one is a bit too much like a B, so it could be confusing. So we're going to have, it's got a little tail and then a thicker line, and then that. I don't know. What I'll do is I'll do it in pencil and then go over it in pen. D. Then we want the O is just, looks like it's been done with an ink pen. So it's got the thicker lines. D-O. There's our W. That W is very elaborate. Here you can see it's got a very long tail. Do I want to do it like that, or is that too, I think that's too fancy. So that's a thicker line. That's a thicker line, thin, and thicker, like a dot almost. And the N. Now, because the N's at the end of the word, we could try using the long tail version down. It's very fancy. I like it though, it's floral, isn't it? T. Oh, there's a couple of varieties here. Oh, this is fancy. This is going to take a bit of a sew, this one. The. With our H. So it's thicker there, thin, thin, thick down, because when you were using the old pen nibs, if you came down it made a thick line. So it's thicker, thin. This isn't probably the best idea because it's not as like an actual ink pen would be. Down, thin, thick. And the E is going to be a thin, then that'll be a thick, then it comes down and gets thicker. I think I'm going to keep the E a little bit less squirrely with the end. Although that's an interesting one. So there's another one that the end comes like that. Bit too much. You want to be able to read it. Do we want a capital G? Maybe. Right. Thin, thick, thin, thick, thin, thick. Now the only problem I can see, so thin, thick, thin, thin, thick. The only, I'm going to make this a bit more of a fancy A like that because I love those O's. So I'm just thinking here, the only problem coming across here is going to be that, let's get it, to embroider over this spot is going to be a little bit difficult. So this is one reason why I'm thinking I might end up doing it, you know, as I've done with these, on a separate bit like a stamp, but on a separate bit embroidered and then sewn over. And then if that's covered, it's not a problem, you know. You can sort of have that behind it in the background without it being really obvious or taking away from the word, because I do like the idea of being able to read the word. I don't want it to be totally disappearing. Right, so I'm just going to still do it on here. All right, there's my R. So it's a little tail, thick, little thin line, and then it comes into a little sort of point, a D, thick, thin, thick, nice curly edge, little tick, curly edge, tail, a smaller E, that's a bit too big, and just a normal N. We could do a bit of a flourish on the end there, down the garden. I don't mind that as it is. I don't know that I don't know if I want to put path right across these flowers. I haven't used this area here. I mean, if we were to follow it, this is what we'd do, but I'm not quite sure that I want to cover over more flowers. So the P, it's got a little foot, thin, thick, little tail, P. My A is similar. I'm going to do the little tail above. P, A. Just the simple T. Thin, thick, little tail. And I think we can do a fancy H for the end. Thin, thick, and then it comes out like this. When I see it on here, I feel it's a little bit messy, you know. I'm not sure. Let me print out one more. One sec. All right, now the other one to do would be to do this. I'm going to cut this out. I don't think it matters, does it? Rather than taking the time to do it twice, and cut it out. So I've kind of got it to play with. Then I will draw it up properly on a separate bit so as it's neat, you know, just a bit neater, a bit neater than that scribbly bit. So my thought was putting it somewhere like there. This is the other idea. I really feel that if you've done a lot of embroidery of flowers, that it's sort of, you know, it's a bit rude to cover it up, isn't it? Don't you think? I mean, this should bend the other way. Although it doesn't matter if it goes like that. Doesn't really matter if it's a bit wibbly wobbly. As in a windy path. Down the garden. Now, is this going to track your eye or not? That's probably not going to track properly with eyes. So one of the other things we used to always have to be aware of in the old days was getting your eye to follow. So down the garden might be confusing because you might want to go down garden because this is below that line and our eyes naturally want to read that way. But if I go down the garden path, the weight of that will carry it through, and it just means now that instead of doing it in that one little area, I was just thinking that it's going to be a little bit more like this. Down the garden, and it's actually going along the path, the words. The button's in the way, doesn't matter. Do it like that, down the garden path. I like that. So that's what I'm going to do for mine. Hope you enjoyed that process. So I'm going to go and transfer this onto, and I use carbon paper onto the material, and that's how I transfer it on. So I get it. I get my material, I get my word, I get my bit of carbon paper on top of my material and trace out my word like that, and then it will come out on the material using a sharp pencil. Let's get a corner. I just thought maybe I could use this, but I just think I want thin, light weight material. Very fine. So I just do this like this. Now you definitely need to use a very sharp pencil to get it to work. In the end then you might want to use a little bit of a friction. You might want to go over it with the friction pen. So this is what I would do. I would go over. And this is what I mean, because you can't always see it really, really well. But if you've got your word, and your bit of material, you can just go over it. See, I can just see it to go over it like that. And then you've got it there to sew on. So I'm going to get on with that process off camera. All right, I hope you enjoyed this process and happy stitching. And I'll see you in the next one where I come back and I really actually just finalise this whole thing. All right, thanks for watching. Bye for now.